33 years. 33 years I've made Christmas Eve dinner, only to be told I was no longer of any use. The message arrived when I least expected it, as I was arranging the final details on a table I knew would be empty once again. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. You'll be helping me to continue unburdening myself. My name is Carol, and I live in a 2-story house in the Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago. This morning, December 24th, I woke up as I always do, at 6 o'clock sharp, with aching joints and a heart heavy with a hope it no longer made sense to keep. My faded floral robe dragged along the cold hardwood floor, and my worn-out slippers made that hollow sound that echoes in empty houses. The kitchen smelled of bleach and loneliness. On the wooden table, I had laid out the shopping list for Christmas dinner: a prime rib roast, a honey-baked ham, ingredients for pecan pie and Christmas cookies. The same dishes I had cooked for more than 3 decades, hoping my son Alex, my daughter-in-law Jessica, and my 2 grandchildren would come for dinner. But deep in my soul, I already knew what was going to happen. The phone rested silently on the end table in the living room, next to the family photographs I had placed with so much love years ago. In the largest one, Alex was hugging me on his wedding day, smiling with a joy I thought would last forever. Jessica looked radiant in her white dress, promising me she would treat me like a second mother. "Carol, you will never be lonely as long as we're around," she had whispered in my ear during the reception. What a painful lie that promise turned out to be. I dialed his number with trembling fingers. The first call went straight to voicemail. The second one, too. On the third, Jessica answered with a tone that chilled me to the bone. "What do you want now, Carol?" "Honey, I was just calling to confirm what time you'd be here for dinner. I've had the roast in the oven since 5 this morning, and I made those special sugar cookies that Alex loves so much. Look, I told you last year and the year before. We're not coming. You've lived your life. Now let us live ours in peace. We have dinner at my parents' house, where there's a real family atmosphere, not like your place, full of old photos and depressing memories." I felt a knife twist in my chest. My fingers involuntarily let go of the photograph I was holding in my free hand. The glass shattered against the hardwood floor. "But, Jessica, my grandchildren, it's Christmas Eve. I just want to see them." "Your grandchildren are fine without their dramatic grandmother who's always crying and complaining about everything. Ryan and Sophie need joy, not pity. And Alex agrees with me. He's tired of your melodramas too." "Is Alex there? Can I talk to him?" An eternal silence. Then my son's harsh voice. "Mom, that's enough. It's the same story every year. Jessica's right. You've always been too intense, so suffocating. We need our space. Besides, my kids need to grow up without emotional baggage. Your house smells like old people, like sadness. That's not the environment we want for them." The words from my own son pierced me like broken glass. Your house smells like old people, like sadness. The house where he had grown up, where he had played catch in the backyard, where he had cried when his hamster died, where he had brought Jessica for the first time to introduce her as his girlfriend. "Alex, I'm your mother, and I'm a father now. My responsibility is to my family. You've done your part. Now it's time to rest." He hung up. I stood there, motionless, holding the receiver to my ear, listening to the intermittent beeping that confirmed the connection had been cut. Just like every real bond with the family I had created, nurtured, and loved for 47 years had been cut. The roast was burning in the oven. The smell of charred meat mingled with the cinnamon aroma from the Christmas cookies I had baked the night before. I walked to the kitchen like a ghost, turned off the oven, and pulled out the tray. The roast was blackened, completely ruined, just like my hope. I sat on the kitchen floor, surrounded by the pieces of the broken picture frame, and for the first time in years, I didn't cry. I had no more tears to shed. There was only emptiness, a black hole where my heart as a mother and grandmother used to beat. In that terrible stillness, I began to remember. I remembered the sleepless nights when Alex had a fever as a child. I remembered the loans I took out to pay for his engineering degree. I remembered the $60,000 I took from my savings to help them with the down payment on their condo in the Gold Coast. I remembered the afternoons I spent watching Ryan and Sophie when they were babies so Jessica could go back to work. Above all, I remembered the last 33 Christmases. Eating alone, waiting for a call that never came, a text that was never sent, a visit that never materialized. As I sat on the cold floor, surrounded by broken glass and broken dreams, something began to shift inside me. A small seed, barely perceptible, but real. For the first time in decades, I wasn't blaming myself. I wasn't asking what I had done wrong to deserve this abandonment. Instead, I was asking myself something completely different. Why had I allowed them to treat me this way for so long? Outside, the bells of St. Michael's Church began to ring, announcing that Christmas Eve had officially arrived. Neighbors greeted each other on the street, laden with gifts and smiles. Children ran in their new winter coats, and families headed toward homes where tables filled with love and hot food awaited them. I was still sitting in my empty kitchen, but something was being born inside me, something that had been waiting 33 years to awaken. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the queen-sized bed I had shared with my late husband, Michael, for 20 years, staring at the water stains on the ceiling I had never dared to fix because I had to save for the grandkids' expenses. The heat was on low, as always, because every dollar I didn't spend on myself was a dollar I could send to Alex's account when he asked for help. And oh, how he had asked for help over the years. I closed my eyes, and the images came like a painful flood. I remembered that February morning in 2010 when Alex showed up at my door, his eyes red, a crumpled paper in his hand. It was a foreclosure notice. His consulting firm had just gone bankrupt, and he had personally guaranteed a business loan of $100,000. "Mom, I'm going to lose everything," he had cried. Just like when he was a boy and fell off his bike. "Jessica is pregnant with Ryan. We can't end up on the street. Only you can help me." I didn't have $100,000, but I had the house. I took out a second mortgage without a second thought, putting it up as collateral so the bank would lend my son the money. Michael had died 3 years earlier, and that house was all I had left of him. But what was an empty house compared to the happiness of my only son? "I'll pay you back, Mom. I swear. In 2 years, tops," he had promised as I signed the papers that turned my home into a mortgaged property. 14 years had passed. The mortgage was still not fully paid off, but it wasn't just that. In 2012, when Sophie was born, Jessica had come to see me with that charming smile she knew how to put on when she needed something. "Carol, darling, we need your help again. The kids need to go to a good bilingual private school. St. Patrick's Academy costs $1,000 a month for each of them, but it's an investment in their future. You understand, right? As their grandmother, you want the best for them. $1,000 for each grandchild. $2,000 a month. My widow's pension from Social Security was $200 a month. I had to find a job cleaning offices at night, at 62 years old, to cover the expense. My knees were destroyed going up and down stairs. My back bent from carrying buckets of water. But every month, I punctually transferred that $2,000 so Ryan and Sophie could go to the best school in the area. "It's temporary, Carol," Jessica would tell me every time I mentioned how hard it was to keep up that pace. "Alex is going to get a promotion soon and then we can take over." The promotion never came. Or it came, but there were always new expenses. The school uniforms, the private English tutors, the extracurricular activities, the summer camp in Ireland. Always something more. I sat up in bed and walked to Michael's desk, where I kept all the receipts and transfer slips in an old shoebox. I opened it with trembling hands and started doing the math. The yellowed papers told a story of limitless generosity and non-existent gratitude. March 2013. $3,000 for Alex's new car. "It's for work, Mom. A consultant needs to make a good impression." July 2014. $5,000 for the family vacation to Florida. "The kids need to breathe the sea air, Carol. It's for their health." December 2015. $2,500 for Christmas presents. "We want Ryan and Sophie to have a special Christmas, like the ones you gave us." A Christmas I spent completely alone because they were too tired after opening the gifts I had paid for. The numbers danced before my tired eyes. In total, over 14 years, I had given my son and his family more than $250,000. $250,000 that had come from the mortgage on my house, from my life savings, from the overtime hours working as a cleaner until I was 70, from the dinners of canned tuna so I could save every penny. And yet, when I called to ask them to visit, they always had excuses. Alex was too busy with work. Jessica had a migraine. The kids had homework. The traffic was impossible. It was raining too hard. It was too hot. I remembered the last time they had come to the house. It had been in April, 8 months ago. Jessica had walked in with that look she got when she disliked something, barely touching the furniture with her fingertips, as if it might infect her. "Carol, this house urgently needs a renovation," she had said, wrinkling her nose. "It smells stuffy. The furniture is outdated, and the kitchen looks like it's from the 70s. The kids get bored here. There's no Wi-Fi, no flat-screen TV, nothing they like." She had paused, looking at the photographs of Michael I had on the sideboard, and added with a sigh of annoyance, "Besides, all these pictures of dead people and memories of the past make them sad." Ryan asked me why his grandma lives surrounded by ghosts. Alex had remained silent, staring at his cell phone, occasionally nodding at his wife's words. When he finally spoke, it was to deliver the final stab. "Mom, maybe you should think about selling this house and moving into a retirement home. You'd have more company, people your own age, and we wouldn't have to worry about you constantly." Worry about me? When had they shown the slightest concern for my well-being, my loneliness, my health? That visit had lasted exactly 45 minutes. They had left after a quick cup of coffee, taking with them the prosciutto I had bought especially for them. As they were leaving, Ryan, who was 13 at the time, had leaned in to whisper in my ear, "Grandma, why does Mom say your house smells weird? I like the smell of the cookies you bake." But Jessica had called him before I could answer. "Ryan, let's go. We're going to be late for your cousin's birthday party." There was no cousin's birthday party. I knew because the next day, Jessica had posted pictures on Facebook of them having dinner at a trendy Japanese restaurant downtown. An expensive restaurant. A restaurant that I had indirectly paid for with my monthly transfers. I went back to bed with the shoebox of receipts in my hands, feeling like an idiot. An old idiot who had mistaken being useful for being loved. An idiot who had believed that money could buy her own family's affection. Outside, Chicago was slowly waking up on this Christmas morning. The first CTA buses were running down Clark Street, carrying the few people who had to work on the holiday. Bakeries would soon open to sell coffee cakes to families who would celebrate together, families who truly loved each other. Not like mine. I lay there, clutching that box full of proof of my own foolishness, and for the first time in my life, I wondered what would have happened if I had said no. If I had kept my money for myself, if I had fixed the water stain on the ceiling, if I had bought new clothes, if I had traveled, if I had lived. But it was too late for those questions. Or so I thought then. The morning light filtered through the faded curtains as I finally closed my eyes. In my dreams, Michael told me something I couldn't remember upon waking, but it left a strange feeling in my heart, as if something was about to change forever. The days after Christmas passed in a gray fog. I would get up, have coffee and toast for breakfast, watch the morning news where they talked about holiday joy and family gatherings, and then I would sit on the sofa for hours, looking out the window at the neighbors returning from their celebrations, loaded with bags of leftovers and gifts. Mrs. Gable, who lived in the apartment across the street, had had her 3 daughters visiting all week. From my window I could see them coming and going. See the grandchildren running down the hall. See her smiling on the balcony as she hung the laundry she had washed for the whole family. Her face radiated that satisfaction that only comes from solid family bonds. A peace I had lost so long ago, I couldn't even remember what it felt like. On December 28th, I received a message that would change everything forever. I was making myself a cup of chamomile tea when my cell phone buzzed. A text message from Jessica. My heart involuntarily sped up, as it always did when I heard from the family. Maybe they had reflected on Christmas, maybe they wanted to apologize, maybe the kids had asked about me. I opened the message with trembling hands. "Alex, don't forget to tell your mother to transfer us the $2,000 for the New Year's trip to Aspen. With everything we've spent on Christmas, we're short." And tell her not to be dramatic like always. We know she has money saved up. These old people always say they have nothing, but then the savings appear. Tell her if she doesn't help us, the kids won't be able to go skiing, and it will be her fault." I froze reading those words. The message wasn't for me. Jessica had made a mistake and sent it to me instead of Alex. But there was more. I kept reading, and every word was like a whiplash. "By the way, I told your sister Rose that your mom is making up the loneliness thing to manipulate us, that she chooses to be alone because she's a bitter person. Rose told me her mother-in-law is the same, that these old women play the victim to get attention. Your mom could go out, join clubs, have a social life, but she prefers to stay home crying to make us feel guilty." The letters blurred before my eyes. I had to sit down in a kitchen chair because my legs were shaking. But there was still more. The last paragraph completely shattered me. "Good thing I found that retirement home in Joliet that only costs $1,500 a month. When she dies, we can sell her house, pay for the home for a few years, and we keep the rest. The kids need an inheritance, not to support an old woman who's only good for complaining." I already talked to Ryan and explained that Grandma is getting old, and it's normal for grandparents to go live with other old people. He told me he didn't care. I remained motionless for I don't know how long. The chamomile tea grew cold in the cup without me noticing. The words echoed in my head like a nightmare. "When she dies, only good for complaining, he didn't care." My own daughter-in-law had spoken to my 13-year-old grandson about my death as if it were a desirable, planned event, a solution to their financial problems. She had calculated how much it would cost to get rid of me and how much money they would have left. And Ryan, my beloved grandson, whom I had cared for as a baby, whom I had taken to Lincoln Park Zoo hundreds of afternoons, for whom I had bought all his school books and uniforms, had replied that he didn't care if they locked me away in a home. He didn't care. I reread the message once, twice, 3 times, hoping I had misunderstood, but the words were there, crystal clear, brutal in their honesty. It wasn't a message written in anger. It was a calculated conversation, a cold-blooded plan for my future, made without consulting me, without considering me, without caring what I felt or wanted. "This old woman," they had called me, as if I were no longer Carol, as if I were no longer a person with a name and feelings, just an annoying obstacle to be cleared out of the way. The phone slipped from my hands and crashed onto the kitchen floor. The screen cracked into a spiderweb pattern, but it still worked. Like me. Broken, but still functional. I stood up slowly and walked to the mirror in the entryway. The woman looking back at me was 75 years old, with deep-set wrinkles around her eyes, her gray hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing the comfortable but frumpy clothes of someone who has stopped taking care of herself because no one is looking. She was a woman who had aged serving others, giving herself to others, sacrificing for others. And others had discarded her like a piece of old furniture that was no longer useful. But in that moment, looking at myself in the mirror, something changed. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic transformation. It was like tightening a screw that has been loose for years. Suddenly, it clicks and holds firm. I went back to the kitchen, picked up the broken phone, and dialed Alex's number. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. On the 3rd call, he picked up, his voice irritated. "What is it, Mom? I'm in an important meeting." I received a text from Jessica that wasn't for me, I said with a calmness that surprised me. There was a long silence. Too long. "I don't know what you're talking about," he finally mumbled, but there was panic in his voice. "I know about the nursing home in Joliet. I know about selling my house when I die. I know you told Ryan he wouldn't care if I was put away." Another silence. Then his voice changed. It became aggressive, defensive. "Mom, don't be so dramatic. Jessica was just thinking about your well-being. You can't keep living alone, and we can't be constantly checking up on you. A home would be the best thing for everyone." The best thing for everyone? Or the most convenient thing for you? Mom, please, don't turn this into a Greek tragedy. You're old, you need care, and we have our own responsibilities. The kids, work, the mortgage. The mortgage I had been paying for years. The children I had supported. The job he had saved with my money. "And the $2,000 for Aspen?" I asked. He fell silent again. When he spoke, His voice was different. Cold. Like Jessica's. "Mom, if you don't want to help us, just say so. But don't make us feel guilty for living our lives. We've done enough for you. Enough for me? Yes, enough. We call you when we can. We visit when we have time. Not all kids do that. You should be grateful instead of constantly complaining." He hung up. I stood there in the kitchen, the cracked phone in my hand, and for the first time in 33 years of abandonment and humiliation, I didn't cry. I didn't blame myself. I didn't make excuses for their behavior. Instead, I walked to the living room and sat in Michael's armchair. I looked at the family photos that Jessica said depressed the children, the memories she considered ghosts of the past. And then I made a decision that would change everything. I opened the drawer where I kept my address book and looked for a number I hadn't dialed in years. My sister-in-law, Rose, Michael's sister, who lived in Phoenix. Rose, who I had lost touch with after Michael died but who had always been a strong, independent woman. I called her. "Carol? What a surprise! How are you?" For the first time in decades, I decided to tell the whole truth. Rose listened in silence for 40 minutes. I told her everything. The 33 lonely Christmases, the $250,000 I had given Alex, Jessica's mistaken text, the phone call where my son had hung up on me. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Carol, for God's sake," she finally murmured. "How could you put up with that for so long?" "Because they're my family, Rose. They're all I have left of Michael." "No, Carol. All you have left of Michael is yourself. And that strong woman I knew years ago. The one who worked at the textile factory and raised Alex on her own when Michael worked night shifts at the hospital. That Carol would never have let herself be walked all over like this." Her words hurt because they were true. There was a previous Carol, a woman who made decisions, who knew how to say no, who had dignity. When had that version of myself disappeared? What do I do now, Rose? I don't even know who I am anymore. First thing tomorrow, you book a flight and you come to Phoenix to stay with me. You need to get away from that toxic situation and think clearly. You have my home, my couch, and all the time in the world to decide what to do with the rest of your life. But I didn't have to wait until tomorrow for my family to react. 2 hours after I hung up with Rose, the calls started. The first was from Alex, his voice syrupy sweet in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Mom, I'm sorry for how I spoke to you earlier. I've been so stressed with work, you know how it is this time of year." Jessica explained the text to me. It was a misunderstanding. She was joking with her sister, you know how she is. She always exaggerates when she talks. Joking about putting me in a home and taking my inheritance? "Mom, please don't look at it that way. Jessica loves you very much. She just doesn't express herself well sometimes. Look, why don't you come over for dinner tomorrow? We'll make that pot roast you love, and we can talk everything over calmly." It was the first invitation I had received in 8 months. What a coincidence that it came right after I discovered their true intentions. "No, Alex, I'm not coming." "What do you mean you're not coming?" "Mom, we're a family. We talk about these things face to face, not over the phone. Families don't secretly plan to put their mothers in nursing homes. Families don't calculate how much money they'll inherit when their parents die." "Mom, you're misinterpreting everything. Jessica was being honest for the first time in years, and so were you, when you told me you'd already done enough for me." I hung up before he could reply. The second call came an hour later. It was Jessica, and for the first time in years, her voice sounded nervous. "Carol, honey, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. That message wasn't what it looked like. I was talking to my sister about her mother-in-law's situation, not about you. You know how texting is. Sometimes conversations get mixed up. Jessica, the message clearly said, 'Tell your mother.' It talked about my grandchildren, my house, about Ryan. Oh, Carol, you always take things the wrong way. You're always looking for conflict where there is none. Look, why don't you come over tomorrow and we'll clear everything up? Ryan is asking about you." Ryan, my 13-year-old grandson, who, according to her, had said he didn't care if they locked me away. Is he really asking for me? Because according to your text, he doesn't care what happens to me. Carol, Ryan's a teenager, you know how they are, but deep down he loves you very much. In fact, he asked me to invite you for New Year's. You're lying, Jessica. You lie as naturally as you breathe. There was a tense silence. Then Jessica's voice changed completely. It became cold, calculating, real. Look, Carol, let's be honest. You're getting old, you live alone, and you need help. We have our own responsibilities, and we can't be looking after an old woman who complains constantly. A home would be the best for everyone. You would be cared for, we could live in peace, and the kids wouldn't have to carry the guilt of a depressed grandmother. And you could have my house. Your house needs repairs that would cost over $50,000. Frankly, it's more of a burden than a benefit. But yes, if you weren't here, we could sell it and use the money for the children's future. Don't you think that's more useful than keeping an empty house for a woman who isn't going to live much longer? Her words cut through me like blades. A woman who isn't going to live much longer. She spoke of me as if I were already dead. You're a monster, Jessica. I'm practical, Carol. And you should be too. Stop clinging to a life that no longer makes sense and let your family move on. This time, she hung up on me. I sat trembling on the couch, the phone in my hand. In less than 3 hours, I had seen the two faces of my family. The sweet, manipulative mask they wore when they needed something, and the real, cruel, calculating face they showed when they felt exposed. But it wasn't over. At 9 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan, my grandson, with a backpack on his shoulder and a strained look on his face. Behind him, Alex was gesturing from the car, telling him what to say. I opened the door. "Hi, Grandma," Ryan said with a forced smile. "Mom said you misunderstood some things, and Dad brought me so we could talk." I looked toward the car. Alex waved at me as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't hung up on me twice in one day. "Can I come in?" Ryan asked. I let him in. He sat on the couch with the stiffness of someone carrying out a mission he didn't fully understand. "Grandma, Mom says you're mad because you think we don't love you. But that's not true. I love you a lot." "Do you really, Ryan?" "Yeah, of course. And Dad says if you want, you can come with us to the mall next weekend. We could see a movie." The poor child was reciting the words like an actor who had memorized a script. But his eyes wouldn't meet mine, and his hands fidgeted nervously with the zipper of his backpack. "Ryan, did your mother tell you anything about a retirement home?" The boy tensed up. His cheeks turned red. Well, tell me the truth, honey. Mom said maybe it would be better if you lived with people your own age, that you'd have more company, and we could visit you on weekends. And what do you think about that?" Ryan looked down. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Mom says that old people get sad when they live alone, and that they're better off in those homes. She says it's normal, that all grandparents go there when they get really old. And do you think I'm really old?" "I don't know, Grandma. Mom says you are, that you can't take care of yourself anymore." I looked at this 13-year-old boy, indoctrinated by his mother to see me as a burden, as a problem to be solved. Ryan had been my whole world for years. But now I saw in his eyes the indifference that Jessica had patiently sown. "Ryan, do you know how much money I've spent on your education all these years? Mom says money doesn't matter, that grandparents have an obligation to help their families." "And what obligations do you have to me?" He shrugged. "I don't know. To visit you, I guess." "When was the last time you visited me without your parents making you?" Ryan thought for a long moment, frowning. "I don't remember," he finally admitted. And in that honest answer from a 13-year-old boy, I understood that I had lost my family long before that day, that for years I had been buying attention with money, mistaking obligation for affection, emotional blackmail for love. "Ryan, tell your father he can leave. You can stay a little longer if you want, but not because he told you to, but because you actually want to be with me." The boy glanced toward the window where Alex's car was still waiting. "Honestly, Grandma, I have an online PlayStation game with my friends at 10. If you don't mind?" I didn't mind. Nothing mattered to me in the way it had before. "Of course, honey. You go ahead." Ryan stood up with visible relief and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, like someone completing a formality. "See you, Grandma." "Goodbye, Ryan." I watched him get in the car and drive away with his father. I closed the door and leaned against it, processing what had just happened. In a single day, I had seen the whole truth. My family had shown me, without their masks, who they really were and what place I held in their lives. I wasn't the beloved grandmother, or the respected mother, or a woman who deserved dignity. I was a walking bank account, an obstacle between them and my inheritance, a nuisance to be managed as efficiently as possible. But I had also discovered something more important, that I was no longer afraid to see them as they were. And that, surprisingly, made me feel free for the first time in decades. That night, I slept for 7 hours straight for the first time in years. I didn't wake up at 3 in the morning worrying if Alex would need money for some unexpected expense. I didn't get up at 5 thinking about what I could cook to tempt them into visiting. I didn't spend the night replaying conversations I never had, imagining ways to win back an affection that never existed. I woke up at 8:30 on the morning of December 30th with a strange feeling in my chest. It took me a few minutes to identify it. Peace. A deep tranquility, like when you finally stop fighting a current that's dragging you down and decide to swim in a different direction. I got up, showered calmly, and for the first time in months, I put on the blue blouse I had bought last year and never dared to wear because it was too nice to wear just sitting at home alone. I looked in the mirror and saw a 75-year-old woman who had the right to dress nicely for herself, without needing to impress anyone or justify her decisions. I ate breakfast at the dining room table instead of standing in the kitchen as I had for years. I used the good tablecloth, took out the china I saved for special guests, and made myself a real breakfast. Coffee, toast with avocado and tomato, and fresh squeezed orange juice. I took my time, savored every bite, and didn't turn on the TV to fill the silence. The silence no longer scared me. After breakfast, I did something I had been putting off for years. I called the bank. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Good morning. My name is Carol Evans. I need to cancel all the automatic transfers from my account." "One moment, please. Are you referring to bill payments?" "No. I'm referring to the transfers I make every month to my son, Alex Evans's account." There was a pause. I heard typing. "I see you have recurring monthly transfers set up for $2,000. You wish to cancel them?" "Yes, all of them. And I also want to be informed if anyone tries to make charges to my account without my express authorization. I want to sign whatever is necessary so that no one but me can touch my money." "Of course, Mrs. Evans. Can you stop by the branch this morning?" "You'll need to bring your ID and sign some documents." I grabbed my purse, left the house, and walked to the bank branch on Clark Street. The Chicago air was cold but crisp, and every step felt like a small victory. I wasn't going to the bank to take out money for others, but to protect my money for myself. The bank manager, a young woman named Beatrice, received me professionally and explained all the changes I could make. "Mrs. Evans, I also see you have a second mortgage on your home that is nearly paid off. There's only about $15,000 left. With the savings you have in your account, you could pay it off completely if you wish." $15,000. An amount that once would have seemed impossible to gather, but which I now had available because I hadn't sent transfers to my family for a month. "Yes, I want to pay off the mortgage. Today." "Perfect. I can also set you up with a new debit card with higher security limits. And I recommend you activate text message notifications for any movement in your account." As Beatrice prepared the papers, she gave me a piece of information that chilled me to the bone. "By the way, I see that last month there was an attempt to access your online account from another device. The system automatically blocked it. But do you know anything about it?" "No, I don't have an online account. I don't know how to use those things. Someone tried to log in using your personal information, probably someone who knows your social security number and other basic details. Have you shared that information with any family members?" "Alex?" Of course, it was Alex. He had tried to get into my bank account online to see exactly how much money I had. Or worse, to make transfers without me noticing. "Yes, I know who it was," I murmured. "Can you do anything to prevent it?" "It's already done. We've changed all your security credentials and set up a 2-factor authentication system. No one will be able to access it without you personally authorizing each operation." I left the bank feeling like a different woman. For the first time in years, my money was truly mine. My house was completely mine. And my decisions were exclusively mine. On the way home, I stopped at the Lincoln Park Market. I hadn't been in months because I had fallen into the routine of buying only the essentials at the grocery store next door. But that day, I wanted good tomatoes, real prosciutto, artisanal olives, and sharp cheddar cheese. "For how many people, ma'am?" the man at the deli counter asked. "For one," I replied without shame. "For me." "That's great. A woman who takes care of herself. I like to see that." I bought ingredients to make myself a real dinner, not a survival meal. I bought flowers for the living room table. I bought a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon because I felt like having a glass of wine with dinner and didn't have to explain it to anyone. When I got home, the bags were heavy, but it was a pleasant weight. The weight of having chosen, of having indulged, of having decided to give myself the luxury of eating well without guilt. I placed the flowers in a vase that had been stored in a closet for years. The living room was immediately transformed. It was no longer the sad room of an abandoned woman, but the welcoming space of a woman who had decided to take care of herself. At 2 p.m, the phone rang. Alex. "Mom, I just spoke with the bank. They told me you canceled the transfers." "That's right. Can I ask why? Do you know that Ryan starts the new semester in 2 weeks and needs new books? Ryan and his books are his parents' responsibility, not mine." "Mom, you can't do this. What's going to happen with the school? With the house expenses?" "I don't know, Alex. It's not my problem anymore." "Of course it's your problem. We're your family." My family planned a future for me in a nursing home without consulting me. My family calculated how much money they would inherit when I died. My family told my grandson it didn't matter if they put me away because it was normal for old grandparents to disappear. Mom, that was a misunderstanding. No, Alex. It was the truth. For the first time in years, someone told me the truth about what you think of me. And what are we supposed to do now? How are we going to pay for private school? You can send the kids to public school. You can cut back on your expenses. You can work more hours. You can do what other normal people do. Live within your own means. Mom, don't be cruel. Jessica is pregnant again. She can't work more hours. Jessica, pregnant. Another mouth to feed. Another child I would be expected to support while they took the credit for being parents. Congratulations, I said in a completely neutral voice. I hope you'll be very happy with your third child. Is that all you're going to say? Your new granddaughter or grandson will need things. We'll have more expenses. We won't. You will. I am no longer part of that equation. Mom, please think about it. You know we love you, but we need your help. You need me. You don't love me. And for the second time in 2 days, I hung up the phone on my son. But this time, instead of feeling guilt or sadness, I felt something entirely new. Pride. That evening, I made myself the most elaborate dinner I had cooked in months. Roasted vegetables, pan-seared steak with peppers, and for dessert, homemade custard, just like I used to make when I was young. I poured myself a glass of wine, put classical music on the radio, and dined slowly, savoring every bite. There was no one waiting for me to ask why I was taking so long. There was no one criticizing the food or comparing it to other places. There was no one asking me for money between courses. It was the first dinner in years where I felt completely present, completely in charge of my own life. After dinner, I took out a photo album I hadn't looked at in years. Photos of Michael and me when we were young. Photos of our trips before Alex was born. Photos of happy moments when I didn't yet know that love could be used as blackmail. I had been a complete person before I became a mother. I had dreams, hobbies, friends. I had worked. I had traveled. I had been happy without needing to buy anyone's affection. That night, before going to bed, I did something I hadn't done in years. I planned the next day, not based on what my family might need, but on what I wanted to do. Tomorrow, I would call Rose to tell her about my decisions. Tomorrow, I would go to the public library to see what workshops they offered for people my age. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding the life I had abandoned for a family that had never valued me. And for the first time in 33 years, I fell asleep, smiling. December 31st dawned with a leaden gray sky that threatened rain. But I woke up with an energy I hadn't felt in decades. It was the last day of the year that had marked the end of my old life, and I wanted to close it with dignity. At 9 a.m, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Jessica. But this time, she wasn't alone. She was holding Sophie's hand, my 11-year-old granddaughter, and behind them was Alex, carrying a suitcase. I opened the door but didn't step aside to let them in. "Carol, we need to talk," Jessica said, her voice trembling. Her eyes were puffy, as if she had been crying all night. "Please, let us in. It's cold out here." "Hi, Grandma," Sophie murmured, looking at me with big, confused eyes. The poor thing had no idea what was happening. "Hello, sweetheart," I replied, stroking her hair. Whatever poison her parents had fed her, she was still an innocent child. "Mom, please," Alex insisted. "We need to talk to you urgently." I let them pass, but this time I didn't rush to the kitchen to make them coffee and cookies as I had for years. I remained standing in the living room, waiting to hear what new drama they had come to perform. Jessica sat on the edge of the sofa, nervously wringing her hands. Alex dropped the suitcase on the floor with a thud that echoed through the house. "Carol, we did a lot of talking last night," Jessica began. "And we realized we've made some terrible mistakes, that we've treated you badly, that we haven't known how to appreciate you." "Mom, it's true," Alex added. Jessica opened my eyes. "She made me see how selfish we've been with you." I looked at the two of them performing this theatrical scene and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Did they really think I was foolish enough to swallow such a performance? "Oh, really? And what made you change your mind so suddenly?" Jessica looked down. "Well, it's just that, when you canceled the transfers, we realized how much we depended on you, and that made us reflect on how unfair it was." "You didn't realize how much you needed me," I corrected. "You realized how much you needed my money. It's not the same thing." "Mom, don't be so harsh," Alex mumbled. "We recognize our mistakes. That's why we've come to ask for your forgiveness." "And the suitcase?" An awkward silence filled the living room. Jessica and Alex exchanged a quick glance. "Well," Jessica finally said, "we also wanted to propose something, as a gesture of goodwill." "What gesture?" "That I come live with you," Jessica announced with a forced smile. "To take care of you, to keep you company. That way you won't be alone, and we can be at peace knowing you're well looked after." I stared at her in disbelief. Did she really just offer to move into my house as if it were a favor she was doing for me? "And Alex? He would stay with the kids in our condo," Jessica explained quickly. "At least until the baby is born. Then we'd see how to organize things." "I see. And who would pay the bills for this house with you living here?" Another guilty silence. "Well, you have your pension," Alex muttered. "And we could help out where we could." "With my money," I finished the sentence. "Because without my monthly transfers, you can't help with anything." "Carol, don't look at it that way," Jessica pleaded. "Think of it as a chance for us to be a real family. I would take care of the house, do the shopping, the cooking, with my money. And you would have company all the time," she insisted. "You wouldn't be lonely anymore. You wouldn't feel abandoned." I looked her straight in the eye. "Jessica, how long has it been since you've worked?" "What?" "Well, since Ryan was born, 13 years ago. But now I'm pregnant again, so 13 years without a job. And now you want to come live in my house, have me pay all the bills, have me support you, and in return, you'll do me the favor of keeping me company." It's not like that," she stammered. "Then how is it?" Jessica fell silent. Alex cleared his throat. "Mom, let's be practical. Our financial situation is very difficult. With the pregnancy, Jessica can't work, and my salary alone isn't enough to support the whole family. We thought that if she were here with you, we could save on a lot of expenses and I would support all of you. It's not supporting, it's sharing family resources. Alex, have you ever supported me? Have you ever paid my bills for my food, my medicine? Well, no, but have you ever taken me out to dinner at a restaurant? Bought me clothes? Paid for a vacation for me? Mom, we have a lot of expenses, the kids. The kids I've been paying for 13 years. The school I've funded, the vacations I've paid for, the mortgage I helped you pay." "Yes, but things are different now," Jessica interrupted. "Now we want to truly take care of you." "Take care of me or live off me?" "Carol, don't be unfair," she protested. "I would be here with you 24 hours a day. I'd cook the food you like, clean the house, help you with whatever you need. Like a housekeeper? Like a daughter taking care of her mother-in-law." I started to laugh. A bitter but liberating laugh. "Jessica, you have never treated me like a mother, not even like a person. For 13 years, you've treated me like a walking ATM. That's not true. Yes, it is. And now that the ATM has broken down, you come offering yourself as a caregiver in exchange for me supporting you too. That's not it. Then what is it? Jessica fell silent, her cheeks red with shame and anger. Alex intervened. Mom, look, let's be practical. You're old, you live alone, and we need financial help. This is a solution that benefits everyone. Oh, really? And how exactly does it benefit me? You'd have company, care, you wouldn't be lonely? Alex, I'm not lonely by chance. I'm lonely because you two abandoned me. Because for 33 years you preferred to live your lives without including me. Because when I called you, you were always busy. Because when I invited you, you always had better plans. But it's different now, Jessica insisted. Yes, it is different now. Now you need me. Before you only needed my money. Now you also need my house. That's not true. Jessica, how many times have you visited me this year just for the pleasure of being with me? Without asking for money, without needing anything, just to spend time together. A dead silence filled the room. And you, Alex? How many times have you come to see me just because you missed your mother? Another silence. But Sophie came, Jessica finally muttered, pointing to the child who had remained quiet the whole time. Sophie likes being with you. I looked at my granddaughter who was watching me with those big, sad eyes. Sophie, honey, do you like coming to Grandma's house? The girl looked nervously at her parents before answering. Mom says your house is really old and smells weird, she whispered. But I like the cookies you make. Jessica's face turned crimson. Sophie, don't say that. It's okay, I told the child. You can tell the truth. Mom also says you're very dramatic, and that you always complain about everything. But I don't think that. And what do you think? I think you're sad because nobody comes to see you. Out of the mouths of babes. Sophie had summarized in one sentence what her parents refused to acknowledge. You're right, sweetheart. I have been very sad for many years. And you're not sad anymore? Now, I'm starting to feel better. Jessica stood up abruptly. Carol, we need an answer. Are you going to help us or not? I looked at her with all the calm in the world. No. What do you mean, no? I'm not going to support you. You are not moving into my house. I will not continue paying your expenses. I will no longer be your financial solution. But we're your family, Alex stammered. A family that treated me like a bank for 13 years. A family that planned to lock me in a nursing home to take my inheritance. A family that told a 13-year-old boy that it didn't matter if his grandmother disappeared. Mom, please. The answer is no, Alex. And it's final. Jessica grabbed the suitcase furiously. You're so selfish. We offer to take care of you and you refuse it. You're going to die alone and bitter. I would rather die alone and in peace than live accompanied and exploited. She stormed toward the door, but before leaving, she turned to throw one last dart. Don't expect us to ever call you again. It's over. This was your last chance. Perfect, I replied with a smile. That was exactly what I was hoping to hear. They left, slamming the door. Sophie looked back at me sadly over her shoulder before Jessica dragged her down the stairs. I was left alone in my living room, surrounded by a silence that, for the first time in years, did not frighten me. It was the silence of freedom. That night, as Chicago celebrated the arrival of the new year with fireworks over the lake, I toasted to myself with a glass of champagne. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone on New Year's Eve. And for the first time in my life, it didn't hurt. It was the beginning of everything. The first few days of January passed with a tranquility that felt strange, but comforting. On January 2nd, keeping the promise I'd made to myself, I called Rose to tell her everything that had happened since our last conversation. Carol, I can't believe it, she murmured after hearing the whole story. They actually offered to have Jessica move in with you so you could support her. That's the height of cynicism. The worst part is that for a second, I actually considered accepting, I admitted. The habit of giving in is a strong one. But you didn't give in. That's what matters. No, not this time. And how do you feel now? I thought before answering. How did I feel? It was hard to explain. I feel empty, but in a good way. Like when you clean out a closet full of old things you don't use. At first, it seems too empty, but then you realize you have space for new things. Exactly. and now you have to fill that space with things you actually want. That same afternoon, I went to the Lincoln Park Public Library. I hadn't set foot in a library in over 10 years. Not since before Ryan and Sophie were born and I became the family's official grandmother/financier. The librarian, a mature woman with graying hair and a kind smile, greeted me with enthusiasm when I explained I was looking for information on activities for people my age. "How wonderful. We have so many options," she said, pulling several flyers from a drawer. "There's a book club on Tuesday afternoons, a memory workshop on Thursdays, a basic computer class for seniors, an urban walking group that meets every Saturday." As she spoke, I looked around. There were people of all ages reading, studying, browsing the internet. A group of older women were looking at cookbooks and laughing quietly. 2 men were playing chess at a table by the window. It was an atmosphere of productive calm, of people doing things for the simple pleasure of it. Can I sign up for more than one activity? Of course. In fact, I recommend you start with the book club. They're meeting tomorrow afternoon, and they're a very welcoming group. They're always delighted to have new members. I left the library with 5 flyers in my hand, and a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. I had appointments with myself, places to go that weren't the supermarket or the pharmacy, new people to meet who didn't know my story of family abandonment. On Tuesday afternoon, I arrived at the book club 5 minutes early. The chairs had been arranged in a circle, and 6 people were already seated, chatting animatedly. A woman with platinum blonde hair and a contagious smile waved at me from across the circle. "A new face! How lovely! Come, sit here with me. I'm Brenda." "Carol," I introduced myself, taking the seat next to her. "First time at the club?" "First time at any club," I admitted. "It's been years since I've done any social activities." "Well, it's wonderful you decided to start. This group is fantastic. We've been meeting for 5 years. We're like a little family." Family. The word sent a slight shiver down my spine, but Brenda continued talking, oblivious. "This month we're reading Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. Have you read it?" "No, but I'd love to." "Perfect. I have an extra copy at home. I can lend it to you." For the next 2 hours, I listened to a group of 8 people passionately discuss literature, recipes, family traditions, and the way food can express feelings that words cannot. They didn't talk about money or family obligations or who should support whom. They talked about things they enjoyed, things that moved them, things that made them think. "Carol, what do you think?" Walter, a man in his 70s with a white beard and intelligent eyes, suddenly asked me, "Do you believe the protagonist had the right to choose her own life, even if it meant breaking with family traditions?" The question caught me off guard. It had been so long since anyone had asked my opinion on anything that it took me a few seconds to respond. I think everyone has the right to choose their own life," I finally said, "even if it sometimes takes a lot of work to realize you have that right." "Exactly," exclaimed Brenda. "It took me 60 years to understand that." "Oh, really?" "Yes, honey. I was also one of those women who lived to please everyone but themselves, until one day I decided enough was enough." When the session ended, Brenda walked me to the library door. "Carol, it was so lovely to meet you. You have a very interesting perspective on things." "Thank you. I really enjoyed it too. Would you like to get coffee on Thursday after the memory workshop? You can tell me what you think of the book." "I'd love that." I walked back home feeling light, almost floating. I had spent 2 hours talking to strangers, and it had been one of the best afternoons I could remember in years. No one had asked me for money. No one had criticized my house. No one had implied I was an annoying burden. They had simply valued my opinion and wanted to get to know me better. That night, as I was reading the first few pages of Like Water for Chocolate, the phone rang. Alex's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. I had nothing to say to him. 5 minutes later, it rang again. I didn't answer that time either. On the 3rd call, I decided to pick up. "What do you want, Alex?" "Mom, we need to talk." "No, we don't. I've already said everything I have to say." "Mom, please, just listen to me for a second. The situation has gotten really complicated for us. Our landlord raised the rent by $500 a month, and without your help, we can't afford it." "And? What do you mean, and?" "Mom, We're going to have to move to a cheaper apartment if you don't help us. The kids will have to change schools. They'll lose all their friends. Alex, how old are you? What? I said, how old are you? 45. Why? Because you sound like a teenager. You're a 45-year-old man, married with 2 children and another on the way. It's your responsibility to solve your financial problems, not mine. But Mom, you're my mother. Yes, I am your mother, not your financial savior. Grandparents have always helped their families. It's what's normal. What's normal is for parents to support their children until they're adults, not for mothers to support their sons until they die. Mom, please don't be cruel. We just need you to help with the difference in the rent. It's $500 a month, that's nothing to you. To me, it's $500 I could spend on myself. On yourself? What are you going to spend $500 on? On whatever I please. On books, theater, travel, new clothes, restaurants. On all the things I haven't done for years because I was supporting your family. Mom, that's so selfish. Selfish? Alex, I have given you over $250,000 in 14 years. I took out a mortgage on my house for you. I worked as a cleaner until I was 70 to pay for your children's school. I gave up having my own life to finance yours. And after all that, you have the nerve to call me selfish because I don't want to support you anymore. But we're desperate now. And I was desperate for 33 Christmases, waiting for a call from you that never came. And nobody cared about my desperation. That's different. No, Alex. It's exactly the same. The difference is that you never put a price on my desperation. Mom, if you don't help us, it's going to be your fault that your grandchildren suffer. And there it was again. The same old emotional blackmail. Guilt as a weapon of manipulation. My grandchildren are going to suffer because their parents don't know how to live within their means. Because you've taught them that there's always someone else who will solve their problems. Because you've given them a life of luxury that you couldn't afford. Mom! And maybe a little reality will do them some good. Maybe they'll learn to value things when they aren't just handed to them. I don't recognize you, Mom. What's happened to you? What's happened is that I've woken up, Alex. What's happened is that after 75 years, I've understood that my life is worth something too. And what about us? What about us? You're adults. Solve your problems like all the other adults in the world. Mom, if you don't help us this time, we're never going to call you again. Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. And for the 4th time in a week, I hung up the phone on my son. But this time, instead of sadness or guilt, I felt a sense of power I had never experienced before. For the first time in my life, I had put my own needs before the needs of others. For the first time, I had said no without apologizing. I returned to my book and my cup of tea, and I continued to read about a woman who cooked her emotions because she didn't know how to express them any other way. I had already started to express mine with words, and it felt extraordinarily good.